Making the headlines tonight. Prime Minister Hun Sen fires back at erroneous analyst comments about the postponement of the ASEAN-US summit, telling them to go back and study ASEAN affairs again. The UN's top court for disputes between states orders Russia to immediately stop military operations in Ukraine. Owners of the U.S. baseball team, the Chicago Cubs, team up with the Citadel's founder to work on a bid to buy the English Premier League soccer club Chelsea. And people around the world celebrate St. Patrick's Day in their own way during the pandemic. This is the Daily Roundup on EAC News Channel. A very good evening to you. I'm Darshana Gauchan. Prime Minister Hun Sen explained that the postponement of the ASEAN-US Special Summit was not due to the ASEAN chair, which some analysts have commented, but due to the busy schedules of ASEAN and US leaders. He made this statement while speaking at the inauguration ceremony of the SOS Children's Village in Priveng Province on Thursday, and also said that only the ASEAN chair has the right to comment on this matter. EAC News reporter Deka Nin has more.
Prime Minister Hun Sen stated that some analysts continue to make comments about matters related to ASEAN while lacking the sufficient knowledge. So he urges some analysts to go back and relearn ASEAN affairs, as the postponement of this meeting is not up to ASEAN chair. He explained that Indonesia is the facilitator between ASEAN and the United States, so the role of coordinating the times for the ASEAN-US Special Summit falls on Indonesia and not on the ASEAN chair.
ប្រទេសដែលធ្វើការសម្របសម្រួលរវាងអាស៊ាននិងអាមេរិកគឺប្រទេសឥណ្ឌូនេស៊ីអញ្ចឹងតួនាទីសម្របសម្រួលពេលវេលារវាងអាមេរិកជាមួយនឹងឥណ្ឌូនេស៊ីគឺជាតួនាទីរបស់ឥណ្ឌូនេស៊ីអាស៊ានអាមេរិកគឺតួនាទីរបស់ឥណ្ឌូនេស៊ីអាមេរិកប្រកាសថ្ងៃ28ថ្ងៃ29គឺនៅពេលដែលឥណ្ឌូនេស៊ីអត់តាន់បានធ្វើការសម្របសម្រួលជាមួយសមាជិកអាស៊ានទេដល់ទៅពេលឥណ្ឌូនេស៊ីចាប់ធ្វើការសម្របសម្រួលជាមួយប្រទេសអាស៊ានប្រទេស4ដែលមិនអាចទៅចូលរួមប្រជុំថ្ងៃទី28 29បានប៉ុន្តែក៏មានប្រទេសដែលអាចទៅចូលរួមគេស្នើសុំថាសូមឲ្យប្រជុំថ្ងៃ26និងថ្ងៃ27ខែមីនាចំនួនវិញប៉ុន្តែខាងភាគីអាមេរិកបានផ្ដល់នៅចម្លើយមកវិញថាថ្ងៃ26ថ្ងៃ27នេះมันអាចប្រជុំបានទេអញ្ចឹងទេជំរឿសដែលល្អភាគីទាំងពីរស្នើលើកពេលវេលាសិនដើម្បីធ្វើការសម្របសម្រួលតាមក្រោយ
On the 10th of March, Foreign Ministry spokesman Chom Sundari told reporters that the ASEAN-US Special Summit had been postponed from the end of March to a later date, without a new date yet specified. He said that the delay was due to some ASEAN leaders not able to make it to the summit on the previously scheduled date. Dekanin, EAC News.
While speaking at the inauguration ceremony of the SOS Children's Village in Priveng Province on Thursday morning, Prime Minister Hun Sen said that gas prices are rising all over the world and not just in Cambodia. He stated that this problem was caused by the war in Ukraine and that the United States has also stopped importing gasoline from Russia, which is exacerbating the situation. EAC News reporter Anthony Ellis has further details.
The Prime Minister called on people to reduce travel or to commute together with others to reduce the cost of gas. He said that gas prices going up is not something which he can do much about, so people should not curse him for it. Additionally, he remarked on how dispute the rising costs of gas. There is still a lot of traffic on the streets, but he understands that this is something that cannot be changed since people have to travel to various reasons.
ហើយសាំងឡើងថ្លៃសូមកុំជេរហ៊ុនសែនអីតែរឿងហ្នឹងវាជារឿងសភាពការអន្តរជាតិដែលបានកើតឡើងសង្គ្រាមរវាងរុស្ស៊ីនិងអ៊ុយក្រែនវាបានបង្កើតជាបញ្ហាសម្រាប់សេដ្ឋកិច្ចសកលហើយប៉ុន្តែដំណោះស្រាយអាចមានយើងកាត់បន្ថយការធ្វើដំណើរខ្លះឧទាហរណ៍ថាការធ្វើដំណើរ ត្រូវតឡានទៅការឡានមួយយើងធ្លាប់ទៅឡាន2យើងធ្វើដំណើរតាមឡានមួយទៅណាវាក៏ធូរស្រាលតិចដែរណាប៉ុន្តែលោកអ៊ូតែសាំងឡើងថ្លៃតែដើរក៏ចេះដើរស្ទះឡានឲ្យពេញទៅផ្លូវស្ទះឡានឲ្យពេញទៅផ្លូវអត់ទៅមិនអានោះជាតម្រូវការខ្ញុំអត់ទៅរារាំងបានទេអត់រារាំងបានទេ
Between the 16th and the 31st of March, the cost of fuel in Cambodia has reached 5,300 riel, or $1.3 per litre for both regular gasoline and diesel, seeing a 500 riel and 800 riel increase respectively. Anthony Ellis, EAC News.
The SOS Children's Village in Praving Province is one of many SOS Children's villages in Cambodia that raises orphans and abandoned children and children facing inappropriate care. The new village in Praving covers a total area of more than 10,000 square meters and was officially inaugurated on Thursday morning under the presidency of Prime Minister Hun Sen. EAC News reporter Decca Nin has more.
Speaking at the inauguration ceremony of the SOS Children's Village in Village 1, Kampong Lit District, Praving City, Praving Province, the Minister of Social Affairs, Wong Sot, said that this is the 7th SOS Children's Village to be built in Cambodia since 1999. The villages are located in the provinces of Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, Battambang, Ratnakiri, Klacheh, Kampot, and now Praving as well. He confirmed that the construction of this village began on the 5th of December 2018 and was completed on the 7th of February 2020 at a cost of more than 1.5 million US dollars. The village began receiving children on the 25th of March 2020, with 27 children currently living under the care of 5 mothers and 10 staff. Minister Wong Sot added, after Cambodia's liberation on the 7th of January 1979, the Cambodian people were saved, revived, and have seen development in all areas until today under the wise leadership of the Prime Minister. In this regard, the field of child welfare is considered one of the main priority areas, which has allowed Cambodia to achieve many of the main Millennium Development Goals related to the 4 basic rights of children, all of which SOS Children Villages International has also contributed to. Since 1999, SOS Children's Village International has built 7 children's villages in Cambodia and provided employment opportunities for a total of 345 people as managers, staff, mothers, and childcare teachers. The organization has also provided services to a total of 755 children and youth living in the villages and provided study opportunities to 1,496 students. The president of SOS Children's Villages International, Dr. Darehe Vodofa, also spoke at the inauguration ceremony and said that the installment of a new children's village in Praving Province is a testament to the long-standing partnership between the royal government of Cambodia and SOS Children's Villages over the past 2 decades. He extended his thanks to the royal government of Cambodia for allowing SOS Children's Villages to be involved in helping Cambodian children since peace was first restored in the country in the 1990s. Addressing the Prime Minister and the crowd, the organization president said, "Trusting relationships will help them become resilient in face of life's challenges. You understand that resilient children mean a stronger nation. SOS Children Villages as a federation is thankful to you for inviting SOS Children Villages to the Kingdom of Cambodia immediately after restoring peace in the late 90s and entrusting us to work with your government, communities, and children." He also called on the government to further improve policy measures and increase the national budget to reduce situations that pose a risk to the children and consider introducing family-based care in the national care policy and establishing a social safety net around the family to protect children from poverty, violence, and various hardships. He further added that mental health must also be an essential element of the program. Prime Minister Hun Sen then delivered his speech and recalled the history of the SOS Children Villages in Cambodia since the organization began operating in 1999. He thanked the Minister of Interior, Deputy Prime Minister Saw Keng, for providing the land for the organization to build the new village in Praving and thanked the SOS Children's Villages organization for its long-term continued help to Cambodia. Especially since after the war ended in the country, Cambodia became one of the countries in the world with the highest number of orphans, which was a huge burden for the government to address alone. The Prime Minister said, "We are also proud that our children have received education and training from the orphanages. Children living in the SOS Children Villages can get more education than children staying at home." The SOS Children's Village in Praving has a total of 9 buildings, including an office, an arts building, 4 family houses, a village director and staff house, a nutrition house, and a vocational training building. SOS Children Villages plans to establish an 8th village in Bangkok province in the near future. Dekanin, EAC News.
Following the inauguration ceremony of the SOS Children's Village in Pravang Province on Thursday morning, Prime Minister Hun Sen continued to meet with the new president of SOS Children's Villages, Dereji Wardofa, at the Peace Palace in Phnom Penh, where they discussed the protection of children in Cambodia. EAC News reporter Anthony Ellis has more details.
Prime Minister Hun Sen confirmed to the international president of the SOS KDI, Mr. Dedri Wudra, that there is no country in the world that suffered the most like Cambodia. However, Cambodia does not allow Cambodian children to starve. It is necessary to find shelter and supply for them. Addressing Mr. Dedri Wudra at the offices of the councils and ministries on the afternoon of the 17th of March 2022, Prime Minister Hun Sen expressed his satisfaction with the partnership with the SOS organisation. He says the 20-year relationship with the organisation has not been diminished, which shows that the strength of the partnership between the organisation and the government. He supported the work of the organisation and said that the Cambodian government has also made children a priority and that the government will do what it can to meet the needs of the children. Assistant Prime Minister Ng Sopulat told reporters, Prime Minister said that our world, there is no country that suffered the most like Cambodia. However, Cambodia does not let Cambodian children starve. A good office is not a Cambodian priority for Cambodian officials, but to shelter and needs of children a Cambodian priority. Prime Minister agreed on the work of the SOS to ensure that the children who have stayed in the organisation's children's village can go out and participate in society with the knowledge to find a job, work according to their dreams. The president of SOS KDI International, Mr. Dedri Wudra, thanked Prime Minister for following SOS to partner with the government and to support the country for more than 20 years in carrying out its mission to help children and to give love and support. In particular, education to help these children make their dreams come true. He reassured Prime Minister that his organisation would do more to help children. On the morning of the 17th of March 2022, Prime Minister Hun Sen attended the inauguration ceremony of the SOS Pravang Children's Village in Pravang Province, the 7th village in Cambodia to help the children's orphans, abandoned children and children with improper care. Speaking at the ceremony, Prime Minister Hun Sen recalled the massacre under the Khmer Rouge regime and the war that left many Cambodian children orphaned at that time. And the government has continued to pay attention to helping children thrive today. Although the problem of the war orphans is no longer present, the government continues to help the children as new resource. Anthony Ellis, EAC News.
Cambodia has reported 132 new COVID-19 cases, including 8 which are imported. There have been 379 patient recoveries and no new deaths. The kingdom recorded 124 new community and 8 new imported cases of the new variant, meaning that Cambodia has now recorded 14,183 cases of Omicron, 1,272 imported, and 12,911 community cases. Cambodia's COVID-19 case tally has now climbed to 134,624. The death toll stands at 3,049. The number of patients treated successfully since the pandemic reached Cambodia is 130,407, and the tally for imported cases has climbed to 21,129. Healthcare workers are currently treating a total of 1,092 patients. And now for a look at news-making international headlines this Thursday, 17th March.
A powerful earthquake with a magnitude of 7.3 jolted Japan's northeast coast on Wednesday, shaking buildings as far as Tokyo, where it left hundreds of thousands without power and reviving memories of devastating quake 11 years earlier. The tremor hit off the coast of Fukushima Prefecture, some 275 kilometers northeast of Tokyo, and a depth of 60 kilometers, the Japan Meteorological Agency has said. It has triggered a fire alarm at a turbine at the crippled crippled Fukushima Daiichi plant, authorities have said, adding that they were checking the situation. That plant was devastated by a magnitude 9 earthquake and following tsunami in March 2011. Regarding the damage to the nuclear facilities, no irregularities have been identified at Onagawa and Fukushima No. 2 nuclear power plants at the moment. We are still checking status of Fukushima No. 1 nuclear power plant, said the Japanese Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno. Tokyo Electric Power Company has said that around 2 million households were without power, including 700,000 in the capital, and that it was checking the condition of reactors at Fukushima and other plants, public broadcaster NHK reported. Authorities has also issued a tsunami warning for the region of as high as 1.3 feet, with public broadcaster NHK reporting waves of 8 inches in some places.
Three people were killed and 5 wounded after shelling caused a fire at a market in the eastern Ukraine city of Kharkiv, Ukraine State Emergency Services have said on Wednesday, March 16. Shelling hit the market, a warehouse with food and humanitarian aid, and 2 schools. Firefighters have worked to extinguish the dense flames engulfing the market damaged by shelling. At a warehouse, firefighters worked amid thick smoke rising from the building. One of the firefighters has suffered injuries during the rescue and was driven away in an ambulance. How can one destroy a school? What do the Russian occupiers do here? How can anyone fire rockets in an educational facility, said the school director Lilia Chalet. A war of children drawings are still standing amid the destruction. Shelling has also hit the Kharkiv Institute of Further Education. This was a maths classroom and this one I cannot remember. Lecture, I think, said the man walking destroyed classrooms.
Ukrainian nurse Oksana Martinenko and her colleagues have 21 babies to look after at a makeshift clinic in a residential basement on the outskirts of Kyiv, all of them surrogate whose parent cannot come to collect them because of the war. All the while, she has her own family to worry about. Her children are in the region around Sumy, a city some 320 kilometers east of the capital, which has been bombarded by the Russian forces. It is too dangerous for Martinenko to try to reach them, so they are living with their grandmother. We haven't been able to get home since February 24th, she has said. Martinenko calls her family when she can to see if they are safe and whether they manage to sleep at night. Ukrainians across the country are dashing between homes and air raid shelters as advancing Russian forces attack cities and towns. In the bare surroundings of the clinic, one nurse pushes a baby carriage with one hand and holds an infant in the other as she and her colleagues comfort the children. Babies lie in a line of small plastic beds and bottles are stacked up to be sterilized. Staff have said that 2 couples, one from Germany and one from Argentina, had made it to Kyiv to unite with their surrogate children, but it was not clear when they would be able to take them out of the country. Ukraine is an international surrogacy hub involving thousands of babies each year in normal times, according to some estimates, many of them taken abroad by foreigners. The practice has raised concerns among rights groups and some former surrogate mothers over the physical and psychological costs of the process and the risk of exploitation of women and their babies in poorer countries. An exhausted Antonina Yefimovich, also a nurse, said that staff were trapped and working around the clock to care for the children. We don't have time to rest now. We try to take short naps, to swap. It is tough, Yefimovich said.
The UN's top court for disputes between states on Wednesday, March 16th, has ordered Russia to immediately stop military operations in Ukraine, saying it was profoundly concerned by Moscow's use of force. The judges added that Russia must also ensure that other forces under its control or supported by Moscow should not continue the military operation.
Ukraine has filed its case at the International Court of Justice shortly after Russia's invasion began on February 24, saying that Russia's apparent justification that it was acting to prevent a genocide in eastern Ukraine is unfounded. In addition to disputing the grounds for the invasion, Kiev also sought emergency provisional measures against Russia to halt the violence before the case is heard in full. Although the court's rulings are binding, it has no direct means of enforcing them, and in rare cases, countries have ignored them in the past. During hearings earlier this month, Ukraine has said there is no threat of genocide in eastern Ukraine, and the UN's 1948 Genocide Convention, which both countries have signed, does not allow an invasion to prevent one. Russia has said it had skipped the hearings at the ICJ, also known as the World Court, in light of the apparent absurdity of the lawsuit. It later filed a written document arguing the court should not impose any measures. Russian President Vladimir Putin has described the invasion as a special military action needed to protect people who have been subjected to bullying and genocide, referring to those whose first of only language is Russian in eastern Ukraine.
The Russian Federation shall immediately suspend the military operations that it commenced on 24 February 2022 in the territory of Ukraine. The Russian Federation shall ensure that any military or irregular armed units which may be directed or supported by it, as well as any organizations and persons which may be subject to its control or direction, take no steps in furtherance of the military operations referred to in point 1 above. Both parties shall refrain from any action which may aggravate or extend the dispute before the court or make it more difficult to resolve. The court is acutely aware of the extent of the human tragedy that is taking place in Ukraine and is deeply concerned about the continuing loss of life and human suffering. The court is profoundly concerned about the use of force by the Russian Federation in Ukraine, which raises very serious issues of international law.
The United Nations seeks to raise over $4 billion at a pledging event on Wednesday for war-torn Yemen, where the humanitarian drive has seen funding dry up even before global attention turned to the crisis in Ukraine.
More than 17 million people in Yemen need food assistance, and this could rise to 19 million in the second half of the year, UN bodies have said. While Ukraine understandably and rightly requires our urgent attention and focus right now, we cannot drop the ball on other crises, said Swedish Foreign Ministry official Carl Skau. UN Aid Chief Martin Griffiths told the same news briefing that aid agencies were already forced to cut back or stop food, health, and other vital assistance in Yemen, where the economy and basic services have collapsed in the 7-year war. This year's response needs nearly 4.3 billion, he has said. Food prices, which doubled last year due to a blockade imposed by Saudi-led coalition battling Yemen's Houthi group, are set to rise further, since a third of the country's wheat comes from Russia and Ukraine. In Aden's Keros camp, Abdul Yahya has said, "We survived with the help of our son, who collects empty plastic bottles and metal cans and sells them, and the kindness of the people. They are exhausted." The UN have received just over half the 3.4 billion needed in 2020, while last year donors gave 2.3 billion. The World Food Programme has warned on Monday that without substantial new funding, mass starvation and famine would follow. Donor budgets were strained by the pandemic, the Afghanistan crisis, and now Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There are also concerns over allegations of Houthi interference in aid flows. The Houthis ousted the government from the capital, Sana'a, in late 2014, prompting the coalition to intervene months later.
China urges the United States to open up its biolabs in Ukraine for independent investigations by international experts and to stop standing alone in obstructing the establishment of a biological weapons convention verification mechanism, said Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian at a regular press conference in Beijing on Tuesday.
Russia has lately disclosed some U.S. research plans and biolabs in Ukraine. One of them, the UP4 project, studies the possibility of the spread of avian viruses through migrating birds. The R781 project considers bats as carriers of pathogens that can be transmitted to humans. Another project code-named UP8 is aimed at studying the Congo Crimean hemorrhagic fever virus and hantaviruses. The evidence revealed by Russia shows that the U.S. is trying to obtain means of releasing biological chemical weapons by experimenting on the relations between migrating birds and the spread of viruses. It also shows that the US and some other Western countries are gathering and transferring in a planned manner biological samples in Ukraine and may have conducted biological research targeting different ethnic populations. Xiao has also said, when confronted with evidence revealed by Russia, the US is trying to muddle through by simply dismissing the concerns as disinformation. Is this convincing at all? If the US wants to prove its innocence, it needs to give a full account of its biomilitary activities in a responsible manner. We welcome a joint assessment of the documents provided by Russia under the framework of the UN and the BWC. More importantly, we call on the U.S. to open up those biolabs for independent investigations by international experts and stop standing alone in obstructing the establishment of a BWC verification mechanism. In response to questions on information about the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine deleting certain documents from its website, Xiao has said it is the U.S. side that owes the world a full explanation and clarification. He has pointed out that the concerns of the international community about U.S. biological labs in Ukraine boil down to what the U.S. has done and what has been hidden from the public. Why is the U.S. the only party that is opposed to establishing a biological weapons convention verification regime?
After the break, a look at all the latest sports news.
If it's happening and you need to know about it, you'll get it all right here. EAC News brings you updates and breaking news in English across all of our platforms and channels. The EAC News app, YouTube, Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and our website www.eacnews.asia. Join me and the rest of the EAC News team every day on your favorite channels. EAC News, Cambodia made clear.
The owners of the U.S. baseball team, the Chicago Cubs, have teamed up with Citadel founder Ken Griffin to work on a bid to buy English Premier League soccer club Chelsea, a spokesperson for Griffin confirmed on Wednesday, 16th March.
The Cubs owners, the Ricketts family and the Griffin have formed an investment group that is set to make a formal offer for the London club on Friday, March 18th. The bid does not involve Citadel, the hedge fund business owning Griffin. The Ricketts family said they would be leading the investment group that will make the bid. As long-time operators of an iconic professional sports team, the Ricketts family and their partners understand the importance of investing for success on the pitch. While respecting the traditions of the club, the fans and the community, the Ricketts Family Investor Group said, the statement reported by BBC. Chelsea was initially put up for sale by its owner Roman Abramovich following the Russians' invasion of Ukraine before sanctions were imposed on the Russian oligarch by the British government. The European champions are currently operating under a special licence and now effectively controlled by the British government. Abramovich bought the club in 2003 for a reported £140 million, $183.16 million. He had funded Chelsea via £1.5 billion in total loans through Fordsum Limited, the entity through which he owns the club. His investment resulted in the most successful era in his history as they won 5 Premier League titles, 5 FA Cups and the Champions League twice. Chelsea is ranked by Forbes as the 7th most valuable club in the world soccer at $3.2 billion. The club is third in the league standings, 11 points behind leaders Manchester City, while they are set to play Lille in the Championship League's last 16th second leg on Wednesday.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine goes against the Olympic spirit, and the time will come to decide on his country's participation in the Paris 2024 Games, City Mayor Anne Hidalgo said on Wednesday, 16th March.
Hidalgo, who will still be mayor when the 2024 Games are held unless he is a surprise winner in next month's presidential election, said Russian President Vladimir Putin was waging an unjust war. For me, the Olympic Games are also a part of this world of geopolitics, Hidalgo said in an interview. What is happening today does not effectively put Russia in this grouping of peaceful countries. Russia calls its action in Ukraine a special operation to disarm and denazify Ukraine. The International Olympic Committee's executive board in late February recommended that sports federations ban Russian and Belarusian athletes and officials from competing in events following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Russian Olympic Committee categorically disagreed with the IOC. As things stand, the Russian Olympic Committee is not suspended and Russia is cleared to compete in Paris. This sport had a role to play in global diplomacy, said Hidalgo, who was in Japan in August to receive the Olympic flag at the close of the Tokyo Summer Games, postponed from a year earlier due to the coronavirus. She declined to say more on when the appropriate time would be for Olympic organizers to decide on Russia. I am very pragmatic and will make a decision when the moment comes. That's it, Hidalgo said, adding that Putin was waging a war against a country that has the right to self-determination. Vladimir Putin is breaching international law. He does not recognize the existence of international law. We will have to take that into account. Paris mayor says, "We'll see. I'm very pragmatic and we will make the decision at the time we need to. That's it." Today, Russia and Vladimir Putin especially are a leader that is directing a war against a country that is rightly entitled to its self-determination. Vladimir Putin is breaching international law, does not recognize the existence of international law and multilateralism, and we should of course take that into account. Any decision on Russia's participation would lie with the IOC. In 1920, Austria, Bulgaria, Turkey, Hungary, and Germany, defeated in World War I, were not invited to take part in the Antwerp Olympics. In 1948, after the end of World War II, Germany and Japan were suspended from the London Games. Russian athletes competed under the Russian Olympic Committee banner at this year's Beijing Winter Olympics because of their poor doping track record.
Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton said on Monday that he planned to add his mother's maiden name, Larba Lestier, to his.
Speaking at an expo in Dubai on Monday, March the 14th, ahead of this week's season opening race in Bahrain, the Briton has worked and changed and hoped to make his soon. The 37-year-old said he never understood why a woman loses her name when she is married, and added the addition would help her family's name to get recognition as well. Hamilton's mother Carmen and father Anthony separated when he was 2. Carmen accompanied Mercedes driver to Windsor Castle in December, where he received his knighthood.
Honestly, I think it's impossible to know what the future holds and what it would feel like. But doing something that no one else has done, of course, would be mind-blowing. And I think I know it would mean so much to all of us that go through all these different emotions through the year, those that are on the road with me, and whether you're at home or at the racetrack, you're there with me in the car, and I'm carrying you with me, and still I rise, right? Yeah. But it would mean the world to my family. It would mean for me knowing that, for example, I'm really proud of my family's name, Hamilton. I'm actually, none of you might know that my mum's name is Labalasteer, and I'm just about to put that in my name. Because I don't really fully understand the whole idea when people get married, then the woman loses her name. And my mum, I really want her name to continue on with the Hamilton name. I think for me, my whole life has been about winning. Since I've been racing 29 years. So I think having that mentality of always knowing that you can be better, but I think during this time, realizing that winning is not everything. And then sometimes when you lose, you actually win and grow. And my advice for people is just don't be afraid of failure, because you will always meet failure on the way to success. And I think for me personally, I've had all these years where I was having this success, but not really understanding why. I was the only person of color to get through to this role, and not only that, but be at the forefront of it. But having all this success there's surely a greater reason for it. But I think for me, I found my calling in the last year or so, really we launched the Hamilton Commission to try and understand what the barriers are for young minorities trying to get into the sport, because it is not diverse. It does not look like, Formula 1 does not look like this place right now, and Formula 1 has to, in the future, look like this, because I think for all companies, they're realizing today a more diverse workforce is better for success moving forwards. And I think our sport, I'm really leaning on all the leaders within our sport to do what's right and make sure that they invest in young youth, make sure they push down those barriers and create better pipelines. So hopefully in the next 5-10 years, you're going to see the sport looking a lot more like this place.
The driver will be chasing a record 8th championship this year after losing out in Red Bull's Max Verstappen in Abu Dhabi on the last lap and a controversial last race in 2021. He said on Monday that winning is not everything, and sometimes when you lose, you actually win and grow. And my advice for people is don't be afraid of failure. Hamilton said during testing in Bahrain last week that the Mercedes were behind Ferrari and Red Bull, and his car is on current form, lacked the pace of completing for wins.
And now for a look at how the weather will be playing out tomorrow. And finally, although the coronavirus pandemic is still present in our lives, people around the world celebrate St. Patrick's Day in their own way, creating joy in whatever way they can.
In America, photographer Cheryl Koval captured the view of a fountain in Fountain Hills, Arizona, which had its water dyed green on the 12th of March in an early celebration of St. Patrick's Day. Meanwhile, the Chicago River was also dyed green per the city's St. Patrick's Day tradition since 1962. It takes about 50 pounds of dye and 2 large boats to spread the change of color of the river to green. In New York, the city celebrated Irish heritage with a quick and small parade, with soldiers and bagpipe players marching down Fifth Avenue. In California, Anna Schwab lovingly refers to her pets as the rescued boys. She involves them in the St. Patrick's Day celebrations by dressing them up in emerald bowls and giving them dog-friendly fake beers. Usually, parade goers, participants, locals, and tourists would pack the streets of Ireland, where the holiday originated, to witness the extravagant St. Patrick's Day parade. However, due to the pandemic, Ireland has postponed their St. Patrick's Day parades this year. But still, the people have found their own ways to celebrate. A father pulls his children around a cart decorated with Irish flags and stuffed animals in their backyard. The staff at a nursing home in Offaly dressed in holiday attire to hold a small and fun parade to bring cheer and festivity to the residents staying at the facility. And a child excitedly shows off his parade of toys to celebrate St. Patrick's Day at home.
Thank you for watching the Daily Roundup on EAC News Channel. For more breaking news and updates, you can check out our website, eacnews.asia, or search EAC News on Telegram or at your favorite app store. More from the EAC News team tomorrow night at 8 p.m. We will see you then.